language allows us to communicate. God is saying he does not want these people to communicate.
Sometimes when you communicate with somebody that disagrees with you, it's almost like you're speaking to them in a foreign language.
Perhaps language is synonymous with culture in this sense.
All of these people would not have the same idea of heaven. Some part of their mind was naturally telling them you need to go out and explore.
When we're young, our fathers are almost like gods to us in a sense.
Don't make fun of your naked father. Okay, I'm all set. You all set?
I'm all set.
We're all set. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Biblecast. How are we doing?
Hello.
Jack's feeling stoic today. All right. So last week, pair down, we went over the flood and introspected on that one a little bit. Today we're going to be going over the stuff that goes on in between the flood and the Tower of Babel, and then we're going to get into the Tower of Babel. Going to revisit that. Epic.
Sweet.
All right, so this is just a little bit of context for this little bit in between the two stories. Excuse me.
Bless you.
So Noah has 3 sons, Ham, Shem, and Japheth. And so I'm going over this part because after the flood, there's a bunch of birthing, and then a little story, and then lots more birthing, and then the Tower of Babel, and then even more birthing. There's lots of pages in between all of these stories of this person had all of these sons, and then they had all of these sons, and these were all of their ancestors. Some of them come into play.
So I think, sorry to cut you off.
No.
In the theme of older writing, I'm reading a really cool set of allegorical stories, I think is how you call them. Non-chronological, is that allegories? Or what?
An allegory is just a story that's meant to have some sort of deeper meaning taken away from it.
What's like Black Mirror? What kind of a series is that? It's called something.
Yeah,
where they're not.
I think it's just non-linear or non-sequential
okay.
or something like that. I'm not sure though.
So I'm reading this. It's the Tales of Genai, and they're one of my favorite paintings of all time. It's called the Sadak in Search of the Waters of Oblivion, which I think I've shown you.
I'm sure you have. What is it?
Sadak in Search of the Waters of Oblivion, and we can pop it up on the screen.
Indeed.
Probably my favorite painting of all time. It's in the St. Louis Art Museum. And
oh yeah, I love that one.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so it's based off of these stories, or one of the stories within this book of stories called The Tales of Genai, or The Life of Haram, something to that extent.
Haram!
Anyway, yeah, Horam.
Oh.
And
not haram.
Right. Well, what's interesting is, like, even in that, the writer, the author of these stories, of these, maybe not ancient stories, but old stories, he goes, there was 12 pages where they were detailing these people that were like, I cut out 12 of these pages worth of detailing like 4 or 5 different sages. And I think that just seems to be like, if it was some sort of way that they would write earlier on of just detail after detail after detail after detail after detail after 12 pages worth of details for 5 people. Maybe there's some way to draw a line or a parallel there to the Bible, like telling us about fucking 60 sons. Like who, like what significance is that?
Like maybe that was just kind of a common theme for writing at the time. Could be, but that doesn't even, they don't even like give a whole lot of context on who these people are. Like I said, maybe they come into play later, but it's literally paragraphs of this person became the father of this person, who then bore him these sons, and then they were called this and this and this and this. And then it'll go into a little bit of detail about one of them, like Nimrod, which we'll touch on a little bit because he's somewhat relevant. But out of the, like 50 fucking people that they named being born, it's like Nimrod was the only one of any prominence. Or, well, I guess him and then 4 others that come into play in this one story so far. We might come across them again. But, yeah, it's not even a lot of details about the guys. It's just
names.
The names. Yeah, and sometimes how long they lived, which was preposterously long. But so Noah has 3 sons, Ham, Sheph, and... my name's Chef. Ham, Shem, and Japheth. So one of Noah's great grandsons was Nimrod. I can't remember whose son that was, but that's not particularly important for the context here. But anyway, Nimrod, Noah's great grandson. Whenever it talks about Nimrod, the verse says, he began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before Yahweh. Therefore, it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before Yahweh. So I guess that's a euphemism back in the day. Never heard that one before.
Before Yahweh in the sense of, like, before I am in front of you?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah. Yeah, that's what it sounds like. But then it says, the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, which, important, because we're talking about that. And then also Erech, Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar, which is where just Babel and all those other places are Shinar. Out of that land went into Assyria and built Nineveh, Rehoboth-ir, Calah, and Rezin, R-E-S-E-N, between Nineveh and the great city Calah. So just bringing that up because he is some sort of a king / builder. There's some person of importance that has been erecting cities.
Okay.
So short story in between the flood and the Tower of Babel regarding Noah and his sons. So it says, Noah began to be a farmer and planted a vineyard. He drank the wine and got drunk. He was uncovered within his tent. So he got drunk, passed out naked in his tent.
Yeah, naturally.
Naturally. I mean, I take my pants off when I get drunk. You start getting hot and sweaty.
My balls was hot.
My balls was hot. I understand. Ham, the father of Canaan, saw his naked father and told his two brothers outside. So instead of... Yeah, so instead of doing anything about it, he just sees his naked dad, goes outside, and is like, hey, dad's naked in there.
Just real casual.
Yeah. So Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it on both of their shoulders, went in backwards so that they wouldn't see their naked father, and then they covered him up with the garment.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so then, and it specifically mentions they did not see their father's nakedness. Then Noah awoke from his wine. Why is it worded like that? Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his youngest son had done to him. He said, Canaan is cursed. Remember, that's Ham's son.
Okay.
Canaan is cursed. He will be a servant of servants to his brothers. He said, blessed be Yahweh, the God of Shem. Let Canaan be his servant. May God enlarge Japheth. Let him dwell in the tents of Shem. Let Canaan be his servant. So Ham saw his dad naked, which I think on its face isn't too reprehensible in the context of the story. The big problem is that he didn't do anything to rectify the situation. Like, he could have just popped in the tent and saw his naked dad, and it's like, what are you going to do about that? It's not his fault. He didn't know. But instead of going in there and being like, oh no, my naked dad, and then covering him up, he went out and, like, I guess joked about it with his brothers, I suppose. That given the reaction of God, that's kind of the read that I'm getting from that, is that it wasn't just like he went outside and was just like, hey, he's in there naked. It was like, dad passed out drunk and he's got no pants on. But so I think that it's kind of an honor thy father type meme in that regard, and that's why he was so upset by the situation. But then Canaan being punished because of what Ham did, I think might be something to the effect of we might be punished because of the sins of our father. Like, because of the ill actions of our ancestors that come before us, we might suffer some sort of consequence because of that.
And okay, so Canaan saw his father naked, saw Noah naked. Ham saw, and then Canaan is Ham's son.
Yes.
And he was cursed for his father seeing his naked father.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And God didn't curse him. Noah cursed him. So I don't know where conscience comes into play there, or if it is removing kind of the God element from the story for, just for this time.
Okay.
For the time being.
I've got a few thoughts that we can, once we finish this, I can.
Okay. That's the story. So go on.
I think, like, when we're young, our fathers are almost like gods to us in a sense. And when you're naked, you're at your most vulnerable state, right? And like, that's why Adam and Eve covered up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would agree with your father being kind of like almost a deity-like figure to you. He is your ruler to a very literal extent, and you kind of look at your dad as Superman.
Yeah, right. A good dad, at least, right?
Right. Yeah, of course.
And it's almost like he goes out and tells his brothers. I'm curious if I wonder if they're his younger brothers or not. It's like you see your father naked. You're seeing that your father, you have accepted, or you've begun to think your father is fallible. He is not perfect. And, a lot of teenagers go through that phase of like challenging their dad, and they get to that point. I think that could be a metaphor for something like that. And then he exposes that to his brothers. And his brothers aren't ready for it, so they walk in backwards. They don't want to see their father as imperfect.
That could be. I like that idea. I think it could either be that, or it could literally just be that they respect him enough that they are just not willing to participate in the mockery that Ham brought to them. Like, he's in there naked, ha ha ha. They instinctively either, like you said, had the reaction of, whoa, this is too much. We just got to go rectify this situation right now. Or they had I guess a little bit more conscious reaction or more, I'll say more well thought out, or just thought out in general, as opposed to like a guttural response of just, that's disrespectful, and we are going to go rectify that as a sign of respect, as opposed to because they aren't ready to view their father as infallible. Or it could be a combination of the two. I'm not trying to say that it's one or the other. It's just my first thought was the respect thing, and I also like your just a lack of readiness to accept the fact that your father is not actually godlike, or at least he's not perfect, as I guess all humans technically are godlike according to the scripture so far, but. Definitely could be that they were just not ready to accept that fact, for sure.
And then, so what do you think the significance of Canaan being cursed? What do you think that is?
That's mainly, I think that's, like I said, the potential for you to suffer at the expense of the sins of your ancestors that came before you. Yep. Because as far as a real life scenario goes, I mean, if your family has been living improperly or just not productively for like the last 100 years, you're probably going to suffer some sort of, I don't know, just a lowered quality of life potentially for that. Like if your parents didn't do anything to like create a fruitful life for the family, and their parents also didn't do anything to create a fruitful life for their family, or if they were being intentionally nasty to people, like you could be in the first scenario where they just weren't being productive, you could now be living in poverty because of that. Or if they were being nasty to people, everybody might just assume that you're an asshole because your parents were assholes and their parents were assholes.
I've definitely had something to that extent. Not that my dad was an asshole, but I recognize that, I guess I should say. In how people will, based on their preconceived notions or prepossessions of my dad, how they'll approach me or how they'll treat me. If they're in, if they disagree with him, or if they are at odds with each other, the way that they would be around me is very standoffish.
Almost like they're treating you as an extension of him, as opposed to a completely separate entity that might be literally a 100% different person.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah, I like that.
Pause for a sec. And we're back.
I'm back, baby.
Okay, yeah, cool. I'm diggity down with what we've been talking about.
All right, cool. So yeah, that's a pretty short story. I didn't think we needed to get too in depth into that one. I mean, the Tower of Babel is also short, but still. So we'll move on to the tower. We've talked about the Tower of Babel before, but we're going to revisit that just because we're going through in order now. Mm-hmm. And I've got more thoughts on it since the last time we talked about it, which is good.
Cool.
So we'll just read through that story completely because, like I said, it is just 2 paragraphs. So the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. As they traveled east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they lived there. They said to one another, "Come, let's make bricks and burn them thoroughly." They had brick for stone, and they used tar for mortar. They said, "Come, let's build ourselves a city and a tower whose top reaches the sky, and let's make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad on the surface of the whole earth." So I'll just read through the whole story and then go through points.
Cool.
Then Yahweh came down to see the city and the tower, which the children of men built. Yahweh said, "Behold, they are one people, and they all have one language, and this is what they begin to do. Now nothing will be withheld from them, which they intend to do. Come, let's go down and confuse their language, that they may not understand one another's speech." Old Testament God move. So Yahweh scattered them abroad from there on the surface of all the earth. They stopped building the city. Therefore its name was called Babel, because there Yahweh confused the language of all the earth. From there Yahweh scattered them abroad on the surface of all the earth. And that's the story. Man tries to build a tower to the sky or a tower to heaven, depending on which version of the Bible you read. God sees it, doesn't like it, and scatters them across the world, switches their languages up so they won't be able to understand each other. So, first couple of questions, I guess, that came to my mind were, or questions and just kind of observations. First of all, they didn't want to be scattered. And I'm not sure why that came to mind in context of the story. Like, did they think they might be? And if so, why? Then I'm wondering if our conscience might inherently recognize the need for exploration. Just because as far as you could think of the tower as like a fortress almost, this big safe space where everybody is going to collectively hunker down and just work together. But maybe they inherently thought we might be scattered because some part of their mind was just naturally telling them you need to go out and explore.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Then, but I wonder how language and understanding each other comes into play there. Maybe, I don't even know. We'll ponder that a little bit more before I give any maybes on that one.
Cool.
But then as far as God scattering everybody, why would our higher self or our conscience want us to be scattered? Like, why would God in the story want them to be scattered? So I'm wondering if we inherently struggle with the conflicting desires to both hunker down and go out and explore. Like that's something that we're constantly kind of fighting ourselves about, because obviously routine is comfortable. If you've gotten accustomed to some way of living and operating, then it's more comfortable to stay there than it is to step outside of that box and try something else, go somewhere else, interact with people that are different than you. Maybe that's kind of where the language comes into play, like just going out and meeting people that are not of this like mind, that are all working towards this one goal.
You're in an echo chamber in that sense.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So maybe that's part of it. But yeah, routine is rarely going to lead you to any kind of discovery, because you're not going to be going outside of your norm to discover anything. Might happen by chance, but it's far less likely. Then what kind of contradicts my thought there is that it specifically said, God says, now nothing will be withheld from them which they intend to do. So why would building this tower or anything else that would make us more capable of achieving success be problematic in the eyes of our conscience or our higher self. That's something that I can't quite understand. Like, looking at it at face value just as a story, I can see why, or not even just at face value, but like the original interpretation that I kind of got from it was just that the path to heaven isn't easy, and that it's going to be difficult for you to find such a large group of people that do have that same idea of heaven and can work in unity to achieve that. But as far as your conscience goes, why would it want to destroy something that is that it recognizes as being good for your chances of success, which God recognized that tower as? He said nothing will be withheld from them. So he's saying they'll be able to do anything that they want to do, anything that they desire to achieve, they will be able to achieve. So we got to stop that. Why?
Nothing will be withheld from them, and this is after he has switched all of their names up. And did he destroy the tower?
It doesn't say that he destroyed the tower. It just says that he switched all of their languages up and scattered them.
Okay, so he stopped the building of the tower.
Stopped the building of the tower. Yeah, I don't know how tall the tower actually supposedly got before this all happened, the scattering happened.
Nothing shall be withheld from them.
Mm-hmm.
And I like this format because it's like, let's let the viewer can think about this with us as we're doing it.
Mm-hmm. And that's not the end of a sentence. It's now nothing will be withheld from them which they intend to do. So it's specifically saying whatever they intend to do, they will be able to do.
Okay, I'll give my thought on, like, I think this story so early on in the Bible is telling us you can't build your way to heaven. You can't get there through tangible possessions even. You can't build your way to heaven. Heaven is a place, like we've talked about, in your mind. And so it's almost telling us, to me, it seems like right off the bat, you're not going to get to heaven by building. It's not a place.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a real place that you can just build to. It's a place that you have to get to in your mind.
Yeah.
Maybe you have, by separating everyone, he's forcing everyone, nothing will be withheld from them. He's forcing everyone to go out and experience life and experience the ability to find heaven on their own.
Yeah, and that could be. I really like that. Yeah, because I would definitely agree that the message could be, you cannot build your way to heaven. Mm-hmm. That's not what it is. That's just simply not a thing that you can do. So stop trying to do that. Go out and explore. That is how you attain existence in heaven on earth. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that could definitely be. I like that idea. And why does God want... I guess that would be why. I was going to say, why does God want them to be scattered? But I think that would be ultimately one of the reasons why. What about the confusion of the language? Mm. That's where I'm specifically, that might have just been them trying to explain why languages are different throughout the world, even though at first it was just these, few people all obviously speaking the same language, because apparently everybody is everybody else's ancestor. So they've all been speaking the same language, learning the same languages from each other. But I feel like, I don't know, maybe they are, but I just feel like they're not, the original writers were not putting those types of just little... Oh, and by the way, this is why, you know, French people speak French and, English people speak English.
In a cynical sense, I think you would break people up so they can't conspire. If that's in order to stop people from trying to do something evil, you would split their languages up so they can't conspire. But I don't know if that doesn't give me total satisfaction.
Well, I had a similar thought where as you were talking about everybody getting together to build this tower that is ultimately like an incorrect idea from conception, maybe there was the potential for that group of people to eventually turn the other way, and instead of trying to collectively build their way to heaven, they could be trying to collectively just ruin everything for other people if you do allow this kind of echo chamber to exist. Maybe.
That's an interesting thought. That's very interesting. Yeah, because I mean, at the basis of it, language allows us to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
So in splitting up the languages, God is saying he does not want these people to communicate.
Yeah, and that's what I'm struggling with. Why would any part of our higher self, or just any part of us in general, lack the desire to be able to interact and communicate effectively?
It's counterintuitive because we're better together.
We're better together. I was just going to say, I mean, especially 2,000 years ago and 2,000 plus years ago, being in a group was essential. Like you were fucked if you were completely on your own, unless you were just a damn near godlike being.
Oh, this is tough because I was about to say maybe everyone has a different path to heaven.
Well, that's the conclusion that we came to last time, where it's like, it's going to be really tough for you to find a large collective of people. Well, not even a large collective of people. It just that everybody in the world's idea of heaven isn't the same. And so maybe it was alluding to that idea. But given the other context, maybe it's a combination of the two ideas, where not only is God trying to prevent them from chasing this false idea of heaven, but also making it clear that beyond the fact that that's just not a thing that you can do, another kind of, I don't know, just less related to the actual story and more related to what type of message you should take away from the story. Maybe it is also just that, again, you're not going to be able to find everybody in the world is not going to have that same idea of heaven. It could be a combination of the two, where it's like, you can't build your way to heaven literally by making a building up into the sky. You can build your life into a state of heaven-like bliss, but you can't build your way there literally. It's not a place in the sky. Combined with the fact that, beyond that, all of these people would not have the same idea of heaven. Mm-hmm. And so they must be scattered to represent that, or not scattered to represent that fact, but have their languages confused, because that's just more realistic to the way that the world operates. People are different. Sometimes when you communicate with somebody that disagrees with you, it's almost like you're speaking to them in a foreign language.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. It's totally what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When you can't see the other's perspective and you're just talking at each other.
Yeah.
You might as well be speaking different languages, truly.
Mm-hmm.
That's a cool thought.
Yeah. Yeah. Specific example that comes to mind was recently on Facebook.
Oh, that's going to be a plenty on Facebook.
A plenty. Yeah. I can't remember what the original post was, but it was something about like people wearing weave. And I asked the question, why is it cultural appropriation was part of the conversation. And I just asked, wait a minute. So why is braiding or dreading my own hair cultural appropriation, but literally weaving the straight blonde hair of a Caucasian woman onto a different race's scalp not cultural appropriation? And the person that responded to me eventually tried to convince me that Caucasians were essentially non-human because Homo sapiens, that she tried to tell me that white people were not Homo sapiens because white people are descended from Homo sapiens who crossbred with Neanderthals, which is like saying that you're not black because your parents are one black, one white. It's like, no, you don't lose your black genetics. You're just both now. Like that type of conversation where somebody is trying to explain something to you that is just like false. And you are trying to tell them, not even in a smart ass way, but just like, no, you do know that we're all Homo sapiens, right? Like, no, not the case. Your people bred with Neanderthals, and that's why you're dying out, and we're gonna take over. Was essentially the message we ended up getting.
That's why black people are gonna take over.
Yeah, which is just like, okay, I'm okay on this conversation now. But all of the men agreed with me. It's like all of them were just like, "What? Answer the question. What are you talking about? Why? Yeah. How did we even get into this?" But that type of conversation where it's like somebody is just trying to convince you of something that is just nonsensical, and you are just trying to have a rational back and forth with them, and they refuse to participate. And I don't mean to say that I've never been guilty of that. I'm sure that I've been that way. I'm pretty hard-headed, or can be at least. So while I don't have an example at hand, I'm sure I've been that way before, and somebody else has suffered because of it. Mm-hmm. But that type of thing, it's like interacting with somebody that just is speaking another language. Like we can't even have a back and forth right now because you are so off kilter that we cannot find any semblance of common ground for us to turn this into what would be considered an actual conversation.
So perhaps language in this sense is, well, here, I'll go somewhere with this. You made me think of this. Perhaps language is synonymous with culture in this sense. Like when we're in the same culture, we can communicate well. We can share our values. We can go these things. Like something that I've been thinking over recently is if you put 100 people in a room and they're all different races, but they're all of the same culture. Mm-hmm. And then you take another 100 people, they're all the same race, but they're all different cultures. Mm-hmm. Which group is going to have more challenges?
100% the people that are part of the same culture but different races. Absolutely. They're going to have an easier time communicating with each other and getting along with each other.
Right.
Because they're going to have similar values, similar views, similar even just mannerisms and ways of behavior because they're brought up in that same culture. And we've talked about that before on the show. Like whenever I lived in a worse neighborhood and I was out walking around, I had nothing to do with the race of the person that sketched me out. It was the vibe. Mm-hmm. And everybody in that area has the same vibe. Mm-hmm. Like it doesn't matter what fucking color they are. Like
it's not a great vibe.
Yeah, most of the people out skulking around the hood are sketchy. Yeah. I remember being sketched out prominently just one time. The only time that I remember being sketched out a little bit by something that wasn't an immediately confrontational interaction was a fucking white dude. Yeah. While I was just walking home with beer. He just kind of weirded me out a little bit, the way he was talking to me. It's like, white. Kind of seems like you're trying to find your opportunity to make a move here, buddy. He was just walking real close, and but yeah, it's a cultural thing more than anything as far as understanding goes. Yeah, I think. Yeah, definitely.
That's interesting. Yeah, definitely. It's funny because like we as humans we're pattern spotters, right? Like when my dad was a police officer in North City, which was predominantly black, the people that he would racially profile were white people because they were going in to sell heroin. Like, there's certainly wrong scenarios where a black person, for instance, is racially profiled.
Definitely.
That 100%. But it's not totally confined to that race, I guess I'm trying to say. I don't know why I went there. But
I think it's relevant just in that beyond the racial profiling specifically. Well, I mean, first on the racial profiling specifically, everybody has experienced that at some point. Somebody has assumed, oh, you are X race, so you must think this, like this, dress this way, whatever.
I had a buddy who, whenever we would go out, he would always, every black person that he saw, he would ask him like LeBron or MJ. And it was pretty racist. They would always answer like enthusiastically, but I pointed out to him. He's like, "Yeah, you're right." So then he started asking the black people, Will Ferrell or Jim Carrey. Oh, tough, funny tangent, but
it's funny. It's not even. He didn't even think of it that way, though. I think that's kind of telling. Like, you had to bring that up for him to realize maybe that could come off as racist. Is he only asking black people that question?
Pretty much.
Pretty much. Yeah, okay. Then that was probably a little bit of a subconscious racial assumption.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's... does racism have to be negative for it to be racism?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Because just racism sounds negative. You know, if somebody calls you a racist, you assume that's an insult straight up. Which it usually is if somebody's calling you a racist. But I guess just on the topic of racism, it seems like it doesn't seem like it absolutely has a negative connotation to it. Mm-hmm. So I think maybe it would be important to draw that distinction between stereotype and racism.
Yeah, I think
where it's like he thought because of stereotypes that, oh, they like basketball. I don't know if that's racist because that's like not a negative thought. I wouldn't be offended if somebody thought, oh, he's white, he probably likes golf. I would just be like, nah.
I don't, but
yeah,
I get it.
Yeah, right, I get it. It's like, even though like the best golfer ever was black Asian mixed, it's mostly an old white guy thing.
Yeah. I mean, my roommate, obviously, maybe even just trying to circle back to the Tower of Babel. I don't know if this will or not. I'm just kind of going down this road. But
we've got off the Tower of Babel, but it's such a short story that I feel like that's fine.
Yeah. Like he'll say I'll say the most racist things to him. He'll say that he's black. I'm white, obviously. He'll say the most racist things to me. I'll say the most racist things to him. And it's like we're all on the same team in a sense. It's like you're part of the club and I'm part of the club. We get to make fun of each other.
Right.
Like that's like something that allows people to be part of, you can make fun of me, I can make fun of you. Cool. We're getting along now.
Yeah, and in that sense, it's almost like you're both recognizing the fact that neither of you are racist towards the other. Otherwise, you wouldn't be cool with those kinds of jokes if you thought maybe there's actually something to that. Like, does he actually think negatively because I'm white?
Right.
But
totally.
Obviously, you don't hold that assumption because you're fine with it. Yeah. Same for him. Yeah. He's fine with it. Because you both know that's not the case, obviously, or you wouldn't be fucking living together.
Right.
And it was the same way with me and my friends, like, and we would crack those kinds of jokes with each other all the time. It's like, yeah, obviously, I don't hate you for any reason. You're staying like the entire weekend at my house every week.
Yeah.
Why would I do that if I had any problem with you for any reason? Like, you wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be spending so much time together. Obviously, I like you. I don't think that comes back to the Tower of Babel, but it's a fun point.
Yeah.
As far as the Tower of Babel goes, I'm wondering, do you have any more thoughts or insights on that?
No, I'm if we ever come back to this after reading the whole Bible and then having more context, it'd be interesting to talk about, but that's all I have for right now.
Cool. Yeah, and same here. I mean, obviously, we've touched on it before, so I kind of expected this episode to not be as fleshed out because we've already gone over a lot of our interpretation of it, and I don't think we need to rehash all of that. But I am glad that we went back through it, and I'm looking forward to going through other stories that we've already read to just touch on stuff that I feel like we might have missed.
Cool, yeah, totally. Awesome. Well, any closing statements or thoughts?
Don't make fun of your naked father.
I've never seen my father's penis.
Saw mine once when I was a young boy and I walked in the bathroom without knocking.
You're a lucky man.
Lucky man.
Your children will be cursed.
Yeah, they will be, actually. Well, he didn't curse
oh yeah,
my
he
son,
didn't curse you.
But I didn't have a son yet.
He didn't say, "Curse you, Robert, for seeing my penis."
He certainly didn't curse me. Maybe when I have my first son, he's going to be like, "Hey, remember that time when you were 3 years old and you walked into the bathroom?" And I was just like, "Hey, bud." I was actually pissed. And
sounds like Old Testament God.
It does sound like Old Testament God. Maybe God isn't your conscience. He's just your dad.
He's your daddy.
He's your daddy. Sky daddy. Yeah, as soon as my son's born, he's just going to be like, little David Alexander there, cursed forever. Done for.
Why, Grandpa?
Well, about 30 years ago, your son walked into the bathroom and I was taking the old leak, draining the main vein. And he did not avert his eyes, nor did he throw a sheet over my urinating penis. And so, I'm sorry, but from then on, that was dunzo for you, pal.
All right. Sorry, Grandpa.
Yeah, I think that's a good send-off.
All right. Cool. Thanks for watching.
See you, people.